Do you think you can do this job forever? Wow. If it's a good idea to work in retail first before you dive into clinical pharmacy. Most of the salaries will range between Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a hospital pharmacist. Today is a Q&A video. I had you guys submit your questions, so let's take a look. Alright, let's read some of your questions. I have it here on my laptop. What salary range can you expect if I'm just heading into the profession of clinical pharmacy? The salary of a clinical pharmacist can vary quite a lot. It really depends on what facility and where you live. Generally, most of the salaries will range between $130K all the way up to $200K. Yeah, I know it's a huge difference, but it depends on the cost of living in your area, so the pay might be more if you're living in an area like San Francisco opposed to a more rural area. All right, one of the questions is, do you think you can do this job forever? Wow, really hard right off the bat. Well, I would say there's 3 different trajectories for my career. So one option is I do stay in this current career forever. 2 is down the line I switch to a different field within pharmacy. Or 3, I switch up to a different career entirely. Honestly, I know for right now, I don't know what the future holds, but I know for sure I will be staying at my current job a minimum of 10 years total, just because I'm part of the public service loan forgiveness program and I need to work for a federal hospital for at least 10 years until my loans are forgiven. But for me, most likely I'm going to try to stay in the pharmacy field as long as I can, just because, all those years of schooling, training, all those loans I took out, and I'd rather stick with it for as long as I can. Okay, let's dive into the question of if it's a good idea to work in retail first before you dive into clinical pharmacy. I'm going to be honest and I'm going to say it's possible, but I wouldn't recommend it. 1, it's very competitive right now. Let me put an example. Let's say candidate A is a CVS pharmacist that's been working for 5 years or so versus candidate B who, is a fresh new grad but has a PGR1 residency in acute care hospital. And you're both applying for a hospital clinical job. Most likely the manager will go with the acute care residency trained new grad. I know it sucks because you have all these years of pharmacy experience, but it's about what kind of experience you have currently. The longer you work in retail, the harder it becomes to switch to a different field, just because you don't have as much exposure to the work environment, to the type of medications. However, like I said, it's not impossible. So I personally know of friends and someone who has worked several years in retail and then decided to take a break, apply for residency, despite the huge pay cuts. It was definitely worth it because my friend, after doing residency, got a job in AmCare, just like they wanted. Now let's switch back to the scenario. So let's say candidate A has 5 years of working at CVS, but then did a PGY1 residency at a hospital just recently. Versus candidate B is a new grad and also did a PGY1 residency in hospital. So with the manager, they're more likely going to choose candidate A just because now they're on an even level field. They both have PGY1 residencies, but you have an additional 5 years of work experience as a general pharmacist. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's switch gears to pharmacy school. Did you work while in pharmacy school? How many hours per week did you work? Yes, I did do an internship. I worked a lot. I would say 16 to 20 hours a week. So put into perspective, I worked every weekend except 1 weekend a month. And there were days where I worked a few hours on the weekday. Yeah, it's kind of insane. But honestly, it was very, very worth it and I would go back and do it again. I like to say it's a temporary pain, but very, very impactful. I say this because I don't think I'd be here today without that internship. Totally honest. Just because that particular hospital internship I had, it was a very well-known hospital, and they had a good reputation. So being an intern there really helped me get an advantage in terms of applying for residency or getting jobs. And doing that internship really did teach me and give me a lot of important clinical skills. So as an intern, I had a lot of exposure to the workflow, what it's like to be a hospital pharmacist, and just the general workflow of any hospital in general. Was exposed to a lot of different hospital and IV medications. And there's a lot of things in terms of nuances that I caught on that most people wouldn't have known if they didn't have that background. So for me, the transition from a student to pharmacist was so much smoother. So even though it was painful to work that much on top of school, it was very well worth it. And I highly recommend that you do an internship while you're in pharmacy school. Were you an out-of-state student? If yes, how did you pay for your tuition? Tuition. I don't recall the exact amount of tuition, but let me just put it into perspective. By the end of pharmacy school, I had about 200 plus K loans.
Say what?
Yeah, it's a lot. So how did I afford pharmacy school? Well, pretty much I took out loans and I worked at my internship. I worked a lot of hours and I lived pretty frugally during pharmacy school, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, my tuition is kind of insane just because it was a private pharmacy school, so it's expected. If you can go to, a public pharmacy school if you're able. But honestly, I still don't regret it because again, the school I went to, USC, is known for a lot of networking, and honestly, USC does have a lot of connections, and I was able to, like I said, get my great internship, get a lot of good experiences. So, and they really pushed me to be a really competitive candidate. So I think it was just worth it in the end. What motivated me? What kept me going? Honestly, my parents immigrated here from Vietnam. I'm a daughter of immigrants, so that by itself is a motivator throughout my entire life. I want to build generational wealth for my future family, and I knew I needed a solid career with stability, and pharmacy was it for me. My pharmacy school friends is what helped me survive in a pharmacy school. I don't think I could have made it through without them. Find your set of friends in pharmacy school and just stick with each other and help each other out. It can be a little cutthroat sometimes just because, everyone's gunning for the same job, right? And just like a job saturation. So you gotta find people that you can trust. So what kind of advice would I give to current pharmacy students? I would circle back to the internship. I know it sucks to have to work on top of school, but there's only so much you can learn from a textbook. Hands-on experience, working in a hospital or even just retail, or just getting an understanding of what it's like. So I want to tell a really funny story, and I think it's really relevant. So back when I was in pharmacy school, there was the student a couple years above me. He was known to be very well smart, top of his class, rogue high. But, there was a story that spread like wildfire throughout the entire school. He was at his community IPI rotation, and he had to measure X amount of mLs of a liquid medication. He pulls out a pill counter and pours the liquid onto there. Yeah. So it kind of shows you, you can be book smart, but you still need to learn the life skills to be able to be a pharmacist. Remind yourself, impressions are important. Never burn bridges, whether it's IPI or API, try your best and think of it as a job interview. There's always eyes on you. That's why I'm just saying. And then lastly, take your learning seriously. You're going to be in charge of taking care of patients after all, so their lives are in your hands. I want to be your assistant. Is that possible? Oh, that's very kind, but my channel is still very small and I'm still a full-time pharmacist, so at the moment I'm not really looking for an assistant, but I'm honored that you want to be mine. Do you think pharmacy has a bright future, or are pharmacists going to be replaced by technology and AI? Well, I think for me, there's some fields of pharmacy that have a little bit higher risk of being replaced by technology and AI, and I think that's community pharmacy. Especially there's a lot of big chains like CVS and Walgreens that, would prefer to pay the pharmacist less or have less pharmacists to pay, and they'd rather have technology take over. However, there's other areas of pharmacy, like I think hospital or ambulatory care, that I don't think we're at risk at all. There's a lot of VANCO calculators out there, but honestly, you can't rely on it because there's a lot of clinical gray areas that you need a clinical pharmacist to ultimately make the decision. From what I see at my hospital, we're actually expanding our roles more and more every year. For us, we're expanding more pharmacy protocols. We're having a lot more scope of practice. So back in the day, we were only able to do the basics like dose VANCO and dose heparin, blah, blah, blah. But now in my department, pharmacists can do so much more. We're doing renal antibiotic adjustments per pharmacy. We're prescribing antibiotics in the ER. We're assisting the providers with IV to PO conversions. Do you think clinical pharmacy is worth it? I'm considering clinical pharmacy, but I feel like all I'm gonna do is wandering around until someone asks me a question. Okay, so I think you're a little confused about what clinical pharmacists do. We're not like a consult. I mean, we respond to consults, but we have a lot of tasks and things we do throughout the day. We're not just sitting there waiting for a consult. If you're confused about what clinical pharmacy and what clinical hospital pharmacists do, I recommend you just check out my full day in a life videos, and I really break down what I do day to day on there. And I'd say it's 100% worth it. I feel very fulfilled using my clinical knowledge, being relied on. The doctors really appreciate what we do, and I feel like I'm really helping our patients. Do you think clinical pharmacists truly make an impact, or are they replaceable and unnecessary? I 100% agree that we make a huge impact. We are mostly behind the scenes, so most people aren't aware of what we do. But okay, the way it works is that when a doctor puts in a medication order, it doesn't automatically gets activated and the nursing gives the medications. We are the middleman. We double check, okay, is it the right medication, right dose, right route, right indication? Is it the right patient? Is it interacting with all the other drugs? Is the IV at an appropriate rate? Is it infused correctly? Is it the right components to be made? Are the instructions correct? Will the nursing understand it? There's a lot of small nuances that most people aren't aware that we're the ones double checking. So there's hundreds of orders that are being fixed and corrected by the pharmacist every single day, and most people aren't aware. We help the doctors a lot, and we also help the nurses a lot. Without us, there's gonna be a lot of medication errors. I know I'm biased, but I really do wholeheartedly agree that clinical pharmacists are important. What would you do if you were to start pharmacy school again? What are some of the things you did in pharmacy school that you will not be doing when you go back? Good question. So I will not go back to making handwritten, really pretty aesthetic notes, because I wasted a lot of time making those notes look pretty and coordinated, and I didn't spend as much time studying the material. What would you recommend for an incoming pharmacy student to focus on to have a good chance of hospital residency and eventually becoming a hospital pharmacist? A lot of factors. So I think getting a hospital internship is very, very crucial. I know it sucks to work while studying in pharmacy school, but I think it's gonna help you with huge advantage. Understanding the workflow and being exposed to all the different IV medications early on, interacting with nurses and providers and other hospital pharmacists and learning from them. I think that is crucial. It's very important. And residency directors, even hiring pharmacists, they're gonna see your work experience, and it's gonna make a huge impact. In addition to that, if you want to do residency, letters of rec are very important, and your GPA. Now for GPA, don't fret too much. Some places are more forgiving about that. If you have a lot of good work experience, extracurriculars, you have really good letters of recommendations, it will make up for it. So don't stress too much if your grade isn't the best. But I want to emphasize letters of rec should be very, very good. If any of your letters are not highly recommend, they're just going to toss out your application. So it's really, really crucial that you make a good impression, and letter writers are gonna put highly recommend no matter what. Whether it's IPPY or APPY, try your best and think of it as a job interview. And word of mouth goes a long way. So if you do well and other pharmacists that you've interacted with like you, that's gonna help you a lot. And it might help move your application forward. I think we're always gonna suffer with imposter syndrome. I definitely had it when I first started, and I just want to tell you that it gets better. For me, I just try to prep myself as much as I can, be prepared for any type of scenario. And I think that really helped me in terms of my confidence. Over time, over time, when you don't need to look at your notes anymore and it becomes muscle memory and it's just nuances like that, you start to become more confident over time in your abilities. I remember when I first started, I was just so scared of, what if I forget to order a lab? What if I forget to order a trough? What happens if I forgot to DC this medication when I started this new one? Or, what if I do something wrong? Things like that. What I did was, for every pharmacy protocol, I made like a master checklist. My imposter syndrome has improved a lot because, I don't really need my checklist anymore. It's kind of a good marker of seeing your confidence shine over time. What really made me feel more confident in my skills was that, coworkers coming to me and asking for advice or asking for my inputs. Or even my supervisors asking me for my detailed notes so that I can give it to the new coworkers that are being hired on. Ma'am, I'm a 4th year pharmacy student and I want to be a clinical pharmacist. What are skills that I should work on from now to be a competent clinical pharmacist? Communication skills goes such a long way. It's very, very important because as a clinical hospital pharmacist, you're communicating with providers, you're communicating with nursing, you're communicating with the phlebotomist, communicating with patients, other pharmacists, other co-workers. So it's really important that you have those soft skills too, to be able to effectively communicate things. In addition to that, charting is actually a big thing. So you have to make sure you are, there's a term for it, charting defensively. You have to chart defensively. So now that you are a clinical pharmacist, your license can be on the line. So document everything. If a patient tells you XYZ, document that on the chart. If you are, let's say there's a clinical gray area and you had to discuss it with a doctor for their input, document that on the chart, just because you don't want anyone to have the ability to take your license away. Could you tell me how your biochemistry degree helped you in pharmacy school and as a hospital pharmacist? And if you could elaborate on how I can get to super specialty within hospital pharmacy like oncology and infectious disease. Will a degree in human genetics and molecular medicine make me more employable in certain specialties? That's a good question. So, don't stress too much about your college major, your pre-pharmacy courses. It's honestly just a requirement to get into pharmacy school. The major is only for you to complete the required courses to apply for pharmacy school. So most pharmacy schools will need you to take some sort of biology, some sort of chemistry, etc., etc. And obviously those requirements are going to be most likely the same courses you need to take for certain majors. In human genetics and molecular medicine, sounds like it's going to fulfill most of the requirements, so you should be fine. Don't stress too much about your major because honestly, your college experience is only to help set you up to get into pharmacy school. And what matters in terms of becoming a hospital pharmacist and your career afterwards, what matters is what you do during pharmacy school. Employers and residency directors are not going to look at your undergrad information at all. What really matters is your pharmacy degree, what you did, your work experience, If you did residency, you know, your rotations, that matters more. Specific major, the human genetics and molecular medicine, that sounds is going to be very, very helpful. And it's going to give you a huge advantage in pharmacy school. Those that didn't do a really strong science major in college, they struggled a little bit at the beginning of pharmacy school, but no, in the end, it doesn't really matter too much. For the latter half of the question, could you elaborate on how I can get into a super specialty like oncology or infectious disease? So most likely, the best route to get into those specialties is to do a PGY2. So most PGY1 residencies are just a general residency. So most likely you'll be at a hospital that does a mixture of different rotations like AM care, hospital, acute care. Some of them might have community in it. It varies a lot. Whereas PGY2 residency is a second year residency, but it's more focused on a specific topic. So there's infectious disease residencies, PGY2s. There's oncology PGY2 residencies. You get the picture. So those, you get a whole another year of training just on that specific specialty. And typically, you know, that's supposed to help you become that clinical specialist.